All right, hey guys, Sam back with you here on Tuesday, May 15th. And next up, all right, for the polling that we do, as I like to remind you, that's how we choose what gets a video analysis. We poll the members every day. So next up, I've got EOS to the dollar. So I've got a 4-hour chart here of EOS to the dollar on Bitfinex here. Now you see I've got some work on this. But regardless of that, all I've done here that I want to point out to you is just wicking off the important pivots, right? What was important to the market? They have a tendency to come back into play. So I just want to encourage you, that's a good practice to get into. You can see here, this pivot here, was that potentially the support here that caused the kick? Then, yeah, we did get through it. Does it come back into play? You know, you just don't know, right? That's why I want them to extend going forward, as I know that pivot was important to the market at some point. So now looking here, it's on a 4-hour chart. It's pretty easy to look at this as a 1-2, right? So all I've done down here, so just to show you this, it was kind of a bit of a dig here to get the absolute lowest low I could find. Where can I get my absolute lowest low? And I got it right on it. That's where this Dolce channel, this little shadow effect can be useful. It just helps you grab the pivots more quickly. So there's the absolute lowest low before we start this whole move up. So if I pull back out here, of course, you got to start asking yourself, well, okay, there's my low, there's my high. Was this technical? So what do you guys think, EOS? All right, so here's my swing low to my swing high. Whoops, I'll get it right on there. So was it technical? Well, right, we broke the 65 clearly. So here was the first bang on it, popped it up back. Now we get through it. We come to the 786 and even get through a little bit. So how do you explain that? Well, the only way to explain it is the algo stayed with it, or so that target remained in effect despite the break of the 65. For whatever reason, I can't always tell you. I can just identify it, right? So what can we see? So we can see algo footprints. So for whatever reason, they stayed long. They kept the swing low to swing high intact. And how do we know that, right? So how do we know? So you think that's coincidence? I promise you that's not, right? So here's the algo target. So clearly you can see they take profit as we just completely fall off. So could that be, as we relate to this pivot down here, now could that be a completed 5-way structure? So I have it as a 1, 2, 3, and we get the subdivision here to complete right into that algo target. So this is certainly, these swings are being traded in relation to one another. So looking at that now, so I'm going to take this off because this one pivot won't come into play until when we get above this pivot. Now potentially for the 4 that will come back into play. So just to declutter the chart a little bit, I'm going to take that out. Now, did this come into play here? Potentially prior resistance offering a little support. Is that what's causing that? Well, let's dig in a little more closely. I'm going to go down to let's go to a 2-hour. We'll cut this in half. All right, so looking here now from that low, working off of what we know was a technical pivot here, right? Do we have anything here that might be interesting? Well, I have the subdivision here. This is a little tricky, but you see I've got us completing the 3rd up here. So this clearly some sort of impulsive. We can just go down here to the oscillator here. That's our peak. So likely that's some sort of a 3rd that's going in. So, how could you subdivide it? Well, this is a little tricky here, but I thought this was the highest probability here. So if I take the length of my 1 projected from my 2 and pull it over, you can see if I can get it right on there. You can see here's our high probability zone for our 3rd, right? That's what we're always looking for. Do we get a 3rd to come up into that window, that 1618175, highest probability for a 3rd? So that plays well for the 1, 2, 3. We get the shallow 4. So pulling that off, then let me get here, this off of that here. So now you'd be looking for a relationship between the length of the 3rd from the 4th. So I would just use straight retracement tool. So pulling from that low to my 3rd high. So we get 4th is right at we get a slight front run on the 38. Up we go, all damn near to the 3rd target. So 1, 2, we got 1st target, 2nd, almost get the 3rd. Now let's consider where we would be since we get this big move here. It's always good to check the length of the 1 projected from the 4 right? You can see we get just a few ticks beyond the 200. So pretty strong move. So it's not terribly surprising the depth of the retracement. So you look at that and you go, oh, well, that was a contender for the support. We got through it just slightly. So you ask yourself, well, why does it stop there? Well, what's the first thing you might look for? Well, we'd be looking for a relationship from the 2 to the 3. Right? Okay, that should surprise nobody. If you've watched more than 3 of my videos, that should be no surprise. So where do we go? We're right, it's like we go 2-tick front run. We get a little low volume node in here. So that's a contender for the 4th. Now, that's deep for the 4th. No question about it. Most 4s are 38 to 50 would be deep for a 4. But because of the length of the 3, I'm not terribly surprised by that. Now, does this hold? Well, we don't know for sure, but we certainly have a candidate. We have a contender here for our 4, albeit a deep 4, to go in with a target up here for our 5th. Right? We get a nice clean algo target. So if this can hold, something to pay attention to. Now, of course, we want to start looking for some market geometry. Right, now, one thing I'm going to go back to a 3-hour here so we can get a little bit more of this in frame here. So if I've got 3-4 here, so I'm looking, so why did we stop up here? I couldn't help but notice this. Now, this is kind of a surprise. This seems like an aberrant tick down here, but we do get a pivot there. So from that pivot to this pivot, right? Hard not to notice that geometry coming into play. If I can get this right on it. Right, we know algos like that, so that hitting that target. So was that a corner pocket? Hell yes, it was. Right here. So the assumption is if that holds, if that pivot holds, right, we've got 80% probability of making the median line. It takes a long time to get there, but bang. And look, and then of course look at the reaction, right? And then as I just showed you, we know. So you start putting the pieces together, and you say, well, why does it stop there? Right, you see what we end up with here. Now, note as we come down here, we come with that geometry on the market that seems to be affecting how the market is moving. What do we get here? We get confluence as well. So we have confluence up here at the target while we tag the median line, hit an algo target, and then just free fall. Where do we free fall to? Right to the lower parallel and the 618. Right, now, that doesn't guarantee that we hold here, but the fact that we get a reaction there is no surprise at all. So this is a reasonable spot to be looking for entry. So the fact that we're getting a little retrace here is not bad news. That's good news. Maybe a little opportunity to get into that. So if you think about where your entry, so this pivot here now may come back into play as a reasonable place to look for an entry on the long side. So if you're going to front run off of that on the assumption we're going to go down to a smaller time frame. We'll take a look at that. But if I look here, I put my stop under the 65. It's all fine and well. So what do I get there? There's 7 to 1. Hard not to like that. And that's just assuming we're going up to this target. So let's go back to. Here we'll pull this off here, and we'll go back to where we were in. Let's go back to. Let's go down to a 1 hour. All right, so here's our technical pivot now. So do we have some sort of a 1 going in there? Well, we know this pivot is significant, so we want to pay attention to that. So if I'm thinking about entering the market here, let me tighten this up. Always got to tighten them a little bit when you change time frames. So if I'm working from the assumption that I've got a good pivot low here, I would not risk beyond that. There's no reason to. That's the first assumption, that I've got my low of this correction in. Now, of course, we're looking for relationships here as well. Okay, so here's likely the A wave, the B wave. It could be here. But here's the 50, right? So you see the reaction at the 50. They've already got the first target. A second algo target just down here by the 65. So if they were going for that second target, that's why the 65 is a good spot for your. So if you were entry here, we got upside targets. I'd be on the other side of the 65. I'd give it just because you've got the second algo target in there in blue. I don't know if you can see that. So if I wiggle that. So if I put that back down here on the low, you can see it's just in front of the 65. So no reason to be on the other side of that, or too far, I should say, from the other side of that. So stop just on the other side of the 65, and then we think about where that algo target is. That's actually now higher. So up here gives us, there's our 23.6. So we've got, what do we get there? 11.3 to 1. I mean, again, why would you not take that trade? Right? We know how strong this project is. We've got all this nice technical confluence. We're right here at this support angle here that seems to be offering support. We're coming to prior resistance teed up here as potentially support. I guess I got to go to 2 hour. Can't squeeze it anymore. So I've got this prior resistance here, potentially kicking in here for some support. So I'd have to go all the way. If we'll go to 30 minutes, see if I can make sense of anything here. So if we look in here, could this be, it's not gorgeous. Let's see what we can come up with here. Whoops, wrong one. I want to zoom is what I want. All right, what do we get there? So there's our 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 into a 3-way B. So you've got a contender there for an impulse. So that would be 1, potentially A, B. Well, we'll have to see where that 2 comes in. 3, 4, and 5. Now that degree, of course, is way too high. So let's come down. We'll go to sub-minuet. Okay, so good. So now looking at that, all right, from my swing low to my swing high. Well, I've already broken the 65. So that 786. That's sort of a last stand. The fact that we've just had we've sort of dipped a toe back into the golden zone, kind of interesting to me. So any help from the oscillators? Well, we've tagged the 30 on the RSI, perhaps a little pop. You don't have classic divergence because we don't have a new low here, but you've got a contender for an ABC. So looking here, we'd have an A. That's tricky. So likely there's your B, and then C getting shaped in right here. If we hold there, we don't know that we do. We could go lower. So A, B, there could be one more down there. We want to look for 5 in that C if it's going to come down a little bit lower. I don't hate that because my stop is so close. So if I pull back out to, let's go to an hourly and think about where that would put us. So knowing that the stop is under the 65 on the larger degree. So our stop would be down here. Here's my 65 in yellow. Here's my second algo target. So looking at that, if I can get this C to shape in here, and of course we want to stay above our pivot here. If we can get this entry here, boy, that gives us pretty nice risk reward. So do we get a pivot there? So I wouldn't just be sitting there with an open order. I'd be inclined to want to wait and see some reaction here as we come down to this lower parallel. Are we going to get through the golden zone? Get an ABC there. So I would look here also if I've got any help from the algos on the other side. So remember, it's always a fib fight. So if I go here, second algo target just down here ahead of that support. So this is a real contender here if we're going to get in that window. So for entry, looks pretty good right there. So that's 12.5 to 12.3. So I mean, very precise in terms of where we'd be looking for that entry, right? I like that precision, and then I'm kind of teeing and queuing off of this prior resistance here in yellow, this prior pivot that the market seemed to like. So if I can get this ABC to come in down here, I've got relatively low risk, right? My stop is on the other side of this 65 here in yellow. So, I like the way that that's setting up. What's the expectation? Well, if that's 1, 2, 3, we're looking for the 1, 6, 1, 8, 4, 5. What would that do for us? Well, where would we be in the broader context? Well, if that's going to go in as a 1, 2, 3, 4, that likely is just the one wave coming out of the hole here of this fourth. So potentially now we'd have a one wave going in of the fifth. Right, so the assumption would be we'd move towards something like this, then look for a retrace as the next opportunity to be a buyer. And that's an alternate thought here, is that, if you're not sure about this and you don't want to take the risk there for whatever reason, you can wait, let the market reveal, do we have a motive wave coming out of this pivot? If we do, then we increase the probability that we're going into the one wave of the fifth wave of the larger degree. So if I go back out, I guess we'll go 3 hour here, and we try and piece all of that together. Does it fit? Does it make sense? Well, if we're going to pivot here, that would just be the one wave because our target is way up here for this fifth and a return to the median line. So if we can get this it's teased itself up pretty well to start looking for that next retracement, looking for the move up here. And of course, again, when you're projecting here, it's just hypothetical. Do we get something along these lines that would take us up in 5 towards the 5th? And again, you don't know where or how it relates in time. I might be looking at a second set of median lines drawn from different pivots, but I know on the very largest degree, these pivots have been significant to the market. So I would pay attention. I would have that. So I'd split my screen. Typically I'll have 2 or 3. I'll have a long term, medium term, which is, I would call it in 1 hour, 2 hour-ish range. And then I have an alternate. So for this, I'm kind of looking for a reaction down here, as I said. So I do think there's an opportunity to trade that with a stop under the 65, trying to get positioned for the 1 wave of the 5th wave. So with that with an 11-4 risk reward, yeah, will I take a swing at it there? Sure. Am I going to back up the truck and empty my account into that trade? Of course not. But, again, it's a function of, well, if you get stopped out, what's the impact to your account? 2%, a good rule of thumb. That's pretty commonly considered a standard for the portfolio management in terms of risk control. If you're stopped out, what percentage of your account are you going to lose? I try and keep that at 2%. So you've got a roadmap in play here. Nice precision entry, nice fat target, and a market that's trading with remarkable technical precision. Algo targets are getting tagged to the tick. Again, why would you not take that trade? Well, it's things to think about. All right, guys. I think that's a wrap here for EOS. I've got one more we're going to do today. I try and do 3 if we've got time for it. So these have been relatively quick. I know that's a lot of content cluttering up that chart. So let me just strip this bare before I pull it apart. So there's your roadmap. Right? That's if we can get there. That's how we get there. Looking for the entry. We know this was the 618, so that first little retrace, very reasonable place to look to maybe take that first position, knowing that if I can get this to go into a motive wave, then I'm likely to have a retracement. That sets up as an opportunity to add to the position on the confirmation that we get a motive wave coming off of that pivot low. Right? Okay, guys, so just a quick reminder for those of you that follow along in crypto, we do have a separate channel that you may not be aware of. If you're on YouTube, it's Trade Devils with an S, right? So the one that you're watching now, this is Trade Devil Singular, where it's just crypto. Trade Devils with an S, we apply the same methodology to all the other asset classes. So you can see this, as I will often remind you, the market makes absolutely no difference. You approach the market the exact same way, and you'll find that it moves exactly the same way. So everything that I teach you here in crypto is equally applicable to name your asset. So over on that channel, we're doing futures, forex, equities, indexes, day trading, everything you can imagine other than crypto, right? We keep the crypto over here on Trade Devil Singular. You want more than that, Trade Devils plural, and then you can always visit us online at our website at Trade Devils. That also is plural, Trade Devils with an S, tradedevils.com. If you want to learn more about our membership and what we offer in our private members Discord, which is where all of the voting takes place as to what gets analyzed in video. So give us a holler over there if you're interested. We do everything from as I mentioned, our private Discord to one-on-one coaching, and we're setting up some group coaching that we'll do in a small group format in a webinar platform. That'll be coming soon. All right, guys, that's it for now. Back to you later.